And hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. I am Abe with MysticGenMara.com, a small town mystic from the middle of Idaho. And tonight we are going to travel into the depths of the sea where monsters abound. But one monster in particular is the one that we will be discussing tonight. And if you are enjoying this type of content, if you want to like the video on YouTube or on Odyssey, feel free to share it if that is something that you're interested in. I have the chat pulled up. Whether or not I can see it on Streamlabs is another question, but I do have it pulled up. With that, a little bit of housekeeping. Let's dive into the depths to go hunting monsters. Tonight is the Kraken. And this monstrosity lives in the deep ocean. Contrary to popular Hollywood lore, the Kraken legend actually originates in Norway, not Greece. That's correct. The Olympians had very little to do with the Kraken in the original stories. That was added later. As it is said to live off the coast in the frigid waters of Norway, it was claimed to be, this is their words, not mine, the hugest monster in the sea. Grammar wasn't a strong point here. Body as large as an island, teeth like boulders, arms or tentacles, possibly horns, depending on the legend you choose to read, that were taller than a ship's mast. The earliest descriptions of this creature seem to come from the late 1100s AD, and those descriptions were actually by, oddly enough, the King of Norway. So this was not someone to be trifled at for something that he had seen and was speaking about. Although more modern beliefs are of a fearsome creature, it's actually a fairly lazy or passive hunter according to the original texts. If humans or ships were harmed, it was usually not the intention. The Kraken didn't hunt humans back in the day. In those instances, it was because the Kraken had been angered by the ships or been hit or hunted by said humans. And yes, there were ways to get around that, and I'll reference one of them in a little bit. The first more modern description of this particular nasty beastie was by Francesco Negri in 1700 AD, and I will not even attempt the Norwegian name. We'll just say that the Kraken was a shortened English version of it. He was followed by other accounts over the next 50 years or so around 1700 to about 1760 is when the majority of what we have today really fleshed itself out. One of the more well-known accounts of the Kraken was by a bishop named, and I struggled with this one, so bear with me, Pontoppidan in 1753. The bishop describes this creature as more of an octopus-like creature, but of tremendous size. He claimed this critter had a bad habit, if you want to call it that, of pulling ships into the dark depths of the sea. Interesting, this bishop influenced the way the writers would later describe this creature. He said it may be something like a giant crustacean or crab, or possibly starfish, mixed in with an octopus. And if you watch the old 1970s version, I believe it was, of, where did he go? 20,000 Leagues Beneath the Sea, you'll kind of have an idea of what that crustacean / octopus combination would have looked like. And mind you, that was during the days of really bad effects, but it kind of got the point across. Another interesting thing with, I'll go with the term bishop for him, is he found that there were fishermen who would risk their lives to fish above where a kraken would live because the catch was so amazing. Disgustingly enough, the reason the fishing was so good is the kraken, being a lazy hunter, would lure the next round of dinner in by releasing fecal matter amongst other leftovers or leavings to draw in more fish. So he would eat some, digest most, spew forth the rest, and other fish would be like, ooh, dinner, and come in, and so the kraken didn't actually have to be a very active hunter. And because this constant supply of food in, waste out, the fishermen in the local areas would actually hang out around where the krakens were so that they could kind of skim off the top of the fishing of the time. It would be so bad at times of this expulsion of waste that the water would become so cloudy you could not see beneath the surface at all. Light would not penetrate because the leavings were so thick. There were very, very big risks with fishing in this department, though. Being dragged into the depths by the tentacles of the creature, by accident usually swinging up to grab fish, catching the ship and pulling it down, or the whirlpools that supposedly would occur when the creature would be startled and submerge rapidly down the brink. The whirlpool would be actually, the term would be associated with the term maelstrom, and so wherever krakens were, maelstroms were to follow because people are like that. There is also an interesting little legend about the kraken vocalizing. Not many legends about them screaming, but there was one legend I found when I was rooting around, and the kraken's vocalizing, screams, yells, however you want to term it, would actually cause underwater earthquakes and possibly massive waves, tidal waves, tsunami waves that would slam into the shores and coasts around the northern oceans. Many moons, and I do mean many moons later, a French researcher, Denis Montfort, delved into the theory that giant octopi actually existed. It wasn't a kraken, it was just a giant octopus. No myth, he claimed it was science. Come to find out, he was right, in a way. The reality is, the Norwegians may have been witnessing giant squid, not so much octopus, but close, coming in at around 40 to 50 feet in length. Those are the biggest ones that we as humans recently have found. Now, does that mean that that's the biggest ones out there? No. We know more about the surface of the moon than we know about the ocean floor, and these guys can live in extreme pressure, so we could be seeing some exceptionally large ones in the depths, which would also lend credence to the legends of the Kraken. Later authors would theorize that the giant squid could have been a cuttlefish as well, and those ones are shorter tentacles, bigger body, more in line with the original legends of island-sized creatures. So the giant squid, and we do have proof of those, for example, ta-da! And this one is about 25 feet. There is a gentleman in the top corner, wrong side, over here, and his body is about the size of just the head, and of course the tentacles are generally 3 times longer than the head, so we're looking at about a 25-foot giant squid there. We'll get Grossy off the screen there. But we do not have proof of a giant cuttlefish, and I did look, and there's some really entertaining art, but no pictures. So I was looking for specifics on this one. Oops. Of course, big scary monster of the deep would enter fiction, and literature specifically, with novelists Victor Hugo, Jules Verne with his 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, highly recommend, by the way, the book and the movie. It doesn't really matter which movie. The Jules Verne 20,000 Leagues there's two different movies. The older one, of course I'm a classic person, is better. The newer one, too Hollywood, they tried too hard at it. Let's just go there. Anyway, another one, and this one is one that one of my friends absolutely loathes this person, but that is Herman Melville and his long-winded epic Moby Dick. If you've ever read it, you'll know why I say that. But even in Moby Dick, the Kraken makes a short appearance, and there's a couple of different versions of Moby Dick, books and movies, and I've linked my favorites below, if you're interested. So, there's also speculation that Lovecraft's Call of Cthulhu and Cthulhu mythos has some ties to the specific monster of the deep as well. And if you want some good nightmare fuel, read some of the Cthulhu mythos that Lovecraft himself wrote. Some of the stuff that they've written since has been okay, but you really want nightmares? Read H.P. Lovecraft's Call of Cthulhu and assorted myths with it. It'll definitely keep you up at night. Back to origins. There was an Italian writer that got the description of a giant fish with many horns or arms, depending on the translation, possibly around the head and neck area. And it was been a long day. Work was interesting today, so I have my tea. The author, this particular Italian author, makes it very clear the Kraken is not a sea serpent. And he wrote about the sea serpent being a completely different creature that generally wouldn't be in the same vicinity as a Kraken. Another account, reported by Hans, and of course I made notes of how to say it, and I'm confused by those now. Egede, E-G-E-D-E, comes from the legends in Norway. This account says that the Kraken would cover miles of ocean when it would surface. Sounds like the floating cities in India, possibly alien? Never know. Many head-like parts and claws would grab and pull up anything under the sea. People, ships, your pet. You never know. And it would surface, wipe everything out, and then go back down. My personal theory, and this is just my opinion by the way, is it could have been a mating ritual, like a breeding ground, where a lot of giant squid would rise to the surface. They don't usually do this, squid in general. What in the heck is this? Oh, just one second. Something just popped up and I'm not sure what it is. We will fix this. Just one. New window. Bring up. There. There. Fix that real quick. Sorry, guys. Now I have windows open all over the place. My personal opinion, though, was when this thing would rise, it was like a squid kind of breeding circle where there'd just be a lot of them coming to the surface at one time, and during the chaos we would have ships, people, whatever being grabbed, not intentionally, accidentally. So that's where I think he gets his concept of this many-headed creature. It wasn't so much there was a lot of heads, it just happened to be a lot of critters. So, and people who were in the water just got caught up in that frenzy. This would explain the miles-long bodies. Just a thought, because miles of giant squid would definitely look like one big creature, because the water would just churn with these monstrosities. Along with this legend was a part that said if a kraken were to be caught in the nets of a fisherman accidentally, because they like to fish right above where the kraken did his business, that only way to avoid the destruction is to speak its real and true name and send it back to the depths, basically putting it back to sleep. In this version, the creature is seen as a sea spirit that must be appeased to be returned to the depths. So it's not just a simple monster, it's actually something that needed to be tamed, soothed, and sent home. Weird. Sorry, I lost my place. There are some names that I found with all of this, and like I said, I'm not going to attempt to say them because Norwegian names are complex to say the least. Yeah, I'll have a lot of J's and hard back of the throat sounds that I'm just not good at, so we'll skip that for all of our ears. Some Swedish maps over the years had illustrations of whale-like creatures with horns over their eyes as protection, and this could have possibly been thought to be a kraken at one point as well. To me, the illustrations looked a lot more like a narwhal, the unicorn whales. Other creatures on the maps were what we would call giant lobsters, and at one time they, by people, were thought to be kraken as well, but they don't go back to the origins of the myths. Pop culture, and here we get into the interesting part of the well-known versions of the kraken, grabbed the concept of the kraken and created new myths, completely new, nothing to do with the origins of this fearsome creature. In the 1981 movie Clash of the Titans and the remake in 2010, they talk about the Kraken being formed from the flesh of Hades, the lord of the underworld, and under the control of the Olympian gods. The Kraken also makes an appearance in various video games, including one of my personal favorites, the God of War 2 video game. Another appearance is the Johnny Depp movies Pirates of the Caribbean, specifically Dead Man's Chest and At World's End. So in those two, the Kraken was... I just didn't write his name down. That was smart. Anyway, it was the pet of the bad guy in the movie, and I can't think of his name off the top of my head. So... Oddly enough, as I was rooting around digging up references and information, there's a hockey team named the Kraken. The Kraken really has become everywhere, and there's always a little bit different twist on the style. Some it's the giant squid, some it's the weird amalgamation of a crustacean and an octopus. But what do you guys think? Just from what we went over here, do you think that this monstrous creature really exists in the depths of the ocean, set to eat a small ship and drag it into the depths? Or was it a misnamed squid or a god of the deep? So let me know what you think, because personally I find these creatures fascinating, especially when you go through the old Jules Verne 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. The book was a lot of fun, but the movie, if you can find the older version, is actually really entertaining, because Captain Nimoy, I think it's Captain Nimoy, the person who plays him plays the arrogant jerk so perfectly. And the effects, like I said, they're totally crappy, but that's half the fun because it's really cheesy, so it takes you a little bit out of the fear aspect, but keeps the interest there. Something to think about when you're watching that. And the original Clash of the Titans is a absolute must from 1981 for really cheesy science fiction fantasy type work. For having very little special effect, like CGI type special effects, they did a surprisingly good job. But again, I feel it was not a low budget film, but when you watch it today, you're like, this is horribly low budget. But that's part of the charm. They remade it with Clash of the Titans, and there's a second movie with that within a few years of that. And they're both really good movies, but they just don't have that unique, cheesy charm of the 1981 version. Again, the Pirates of the Caribbean, Dead Man's Chest, and At World's End have the information as well. And then I reference in the description below the 1998 version of Moby Dick. It's a mini-series movie, if you want to watch it versus read it. And it has Patrick Stewart, Captain Kirk, or no, Jean-Luc Picard, sorry, wrong one. Oh man, that got me in trouble. He just plays the part of Captain Ahab so well as a maniac who's after his great white whale. And so those are entertaining if you are looking for something just a little bit different. It is a mini series, so it's like 4.5 hours long, but the book is like 800 pages long, and as much as I personally enjoyed it, Herman Melville could have cut down on some of his descriptions just a touch. And with that, make sure we got everything lined up here, we will do a tarot reading going over the energy for the Kraken. Because oddly enough, the Kraken, it's kind of a, I don't know, you want to call it a misunderstood evil creature. For being what it is and the legends associated with it, what surprises me is that more people don't look into the history. They just see it in the movies or in the references and go with that, and that's cool, but there's a lot more to it than what we originally thought. I need my cheat sheet. There it is. Just because my memory is absolutely horrible with certain things. But let me know what you guys think of the legend of the Kraken. Do you think that there's a real creature as the basis for it? Do you think that it's 100% just some intoxicated sailor? I have a small desk right here, so when you drop something, you have to move everything. Or was it an illusion, like you're out on the sea for too long and you start seeing all sorts of interesting things that may or may not be real? Because, there's things like mermaids, which, if you look at some of the ancient descriptions of those, what exactly were those sailors seeing? And was that what we were talking about with the Kraken? Was it some kind of water illusion, sea mist, sea fog, or a reflection of light from the sun or the moon on the water? Or were they really seeing, those gigantic, creepy, really disgusting looking giant squid? Because I showed just one picture of a less disgusting one, but there are many, many, many pictures. They have found these giant squid as literally as long as 40 to 50 feet, and that doesn't sound like much until you measure it out and then realize that that's a sea creature. And at 2/3 of that, approximately, give or take, is limbs, like suction arms coming for you. So we're looking to get one more card. I read intuitively and I know these are just for fun, but it's still fun to do. So we will pull the significator card. So this represents the Kraken, him or herself, because there's both of them. And it is the Two of Wands. So we have the Two of Fire right off the bat. And the Kraken is kind of, this is showing shy, a little bit coy, a little bit trying to hide. It's kind of an innocent creature. Like, it really doesn't want to do anything wrong. Doesn't understand why it has such a horrifying reputation. Just kind of wanting to exist and not be hated or hunted. Such a supposedly gentle creature. That which crosses the obstacle or enemy of the Kraken is the Ten of Pentacles. So this is arrogance, this is pride, this is greed. So the things that are against the Kraken are really greed, humans wanting to be the dominant species. Tell you a secret, we're not. In certain things we are, yes, but not everything. Because, as I said, we don't understand what all exists in our own oceans on this planet. And the Ten of Pentacles saying arrogance is crossing the Kraken, and the Kraken in its innocence may have done harm in the past. So let's look at the higher self energy. It is justice. So the Kraken is looking for justice. It doesn't want its fearsome reputation. It's just a creature. It doesn't actually want to hurt you. It just wants to, do its thing. So why was it so did it gain such a terrifying reputation? Just because of its bulk, it didn't understand its own strength. So it's looking for someone to speak for it, to relieve the historical record of its nightmares, basically. And let's look at the subconscious or deeper self. It is the Seven of Swords. Its subconscious is very passive but frustrated. It's looking for a perfected state but not knowing where it is, so it's seeking. So the core of the Kraken, the deeper self, is the subconscious self, I should say, is looking for this goal. It's reaching for something. It doesn't quite know what it is. And again, we're talking possible sentience, but not really. Who knows? Considering there's a theory out there that octopus and squid are not actually from this planet originally anyway. So it could be looking for a home, and its subconscious mind is really trying to find that aspect of its existence. So let's look at the Kraken's past. It is the One of Chalices. So this is an emotional starting point. It could be, it looks almost like, just from the face on the picture here, that it's a sad start. Like the Kraken's origins were not the greatest. And if you look back to the historical records, the King of Norway was describing it as something that was out there, possibly damaging some of their smaller ships, because there were still ships at the time. They didn't travel like they did later, but they were still out there. And so it could be a misunderstanding from the very beginning of the term Kraken. So let's look at the immediate future of the Kraken. We have the Empress, the number 3 in the major arcana. So the future of the Kraken is actually not a negative one. The future is energetically feminine, which means it's going to be a nurturing, it's going to be a growth period, but there's a protection. It's the protective mother energy that's coming forward. So the Kraken's energy going forward is actually going to be either it's going to be the protective mother, or it's going to be protected by something like a mother would protect a child. So the attitude. So this is kind of the personality of the Kraken family, not just an individual creature, but the whole clan. And it is the King of Chalices. Some of these you have to edit with covering. So but the King of Chalices, so the attitude is they're kind of coming to the end of this emotional cycle. So they're coming to the end of the frustration, the the coy innocence has kind of been lost at this point, and now they are seen as something that they're not, and they're frustrated by that, so they want to return to that more peaceful way of existence, that more calm, soothing, neutral state that they used to just float in their ocean and not have to worry about those people up there in their boats trying to stab us. So let's look at where I'm at. The environment. It's the Three of Swords. So the Kraken is looking for truth. They're looking to cut away the illusions. They want you to understand that it's not them that's hurting. The Kraken will be seen as the woman sitting down. The one that's standing up is the person that the Kraken's trying to convince. It's not that they're doing something wrong. They're wanting to just say, it was an accident, dude. We sunk a couple of ships, but you were fishing literally on top of us, and we were fishing. It wasn't like we were trying to hurt anybody. It was just, we were there. And so it's this misunderstanding, and they're trying to reach out and help people understand who and what they are. And their hopes and fears. Edit time. It is the King. There we go. Of Swords. So this is the ultimate removal of illusion. They are worried that not removing the illusion is going to cause more problems, but removing it could also set them up for failure. But their immediate future has the Empress. So by revealing themselves and kind of being out there in the open, you have the protection of the mother energy coming forward with the Empress. But there's also always that risk when you're cutting away illusions and you're trying to be more open and honest, and being Swords is air. That is not really conducive or friendly to water. They work together, but air will dry out the water-going Kraken. So there's that truth, but there's also a risk with that truth. So let's look at the outcome. The overall view is the Four of Pentacles. The Kraken shows fear. The Kraken is the one in the pink. And there's fear and concern of this revealing. Is it going to be an ego-driven help, or is it going to be the patron, the healing mother that's coming in? Because when you look at the faces, the lady in pink is not sure how the lady in the orange dress is really going to respond. Are you going to be a protector, or are you going to exploit the myths and legends of the Kraken? Is this something that's going to be beneficial for both parties, or is this going to be an extremely one-sided event? So, it looks like the Kraken has some big future coming up, like a possible revealing, considering we have really not, like I said before, not a lot of knowledge of what goes on underneath our oceans, and so there could be some new things coming forward in the future, and the Kraken may be one that shows up as maybe not the most terrifying creature that we used to think it was. It might actually be something more friendly, more passive, more not more, maybe even less scary than what our nightmare fuel has brought forward. But releasing the Kraken, it's not always something that the Olympians would say is, we're going to punish those evil humans. The Kraken might not be as bad as the stories have made it out. So, if you enjoy this type of content and you liked this video, please drop a like on it. Comment below and let me know what you think. What are your thoughts? Is the Kraken a real thing, or is it just some, daydreams of dehydrated sailors? And if you enjoy this type of content, please subscribe. I go live every Monday and most Tuesdays. On Mondays, we do educational, biographical stuff. Sometimes usually the first and third Mondays, I will do Occult and Crochet, where we talk about an occultist from the past that influenced our modern world, or a religious figure from the past influencing. And on the second and the fourth, we go through and talk about different creatures, kind of getting a better feel, better idea of what might be out there, what could be out there, things like that, fun little tidbits. And on Tuesdays, it's kind of what I feel like pulling forward for that moment. I do a lot of meditating and intuitive stuff, so it's what I feel led to bring forward on Tuesdays. So, but if you want to find out, pop the subscribe button, a little tap, and hit the alerts so that you know when I go live or when a new video drops. And with that, I will let you guys go. I hope you have an awesome evening. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and I will talk to you later.